He was the man everyone on TV rooted for, scruffy, loyal, sharp-tongued but warm inside. Ken Curtis, the unforgettable Festus Hagen from Gunsmoke, built his fame on honesty and quick humor, but away from Dodge City's dusty streets, he carried heavy grudges and quiet letdowns. In his final years, he spoke about 5 Hollywood names that stuck with him, people he respected, argued with, and in some cases could never fully forgive. What could push such a gentle soul into such deep bitterness? The truth showed a side of Ken Curtis almost nobody ever saw. He grew up behind bars, literally. His life began in one of the strangest places for a future Hollywood star, a jailhouse. Born Curtis Wayne Gates on July 2, 1916, in Lamar, Colorado. He entered a world where the Great Plains were wide, but his childhood walls were steel and stone. His father, Dan Gates, was the sheriff of Bent County, and that job came with a strange family home, a small apartment sitting right above the county jail. While most kids drifted off to bedtime stories about cowboys and outlaws, Ken had the real thing downstairs. The clanging metal doors, the heavy footsteps, and the low voices of inmates shaped the soundtrack of his earliest memories. His mother, Nellie Sneed Gates, cooked every meal for both the family and the prisoners, serving hot food through iron bars with steady hands and a calm voice. Ken would stand beside her, watching tough men offer soft thanks. Those moments didn't just stay in his memory. They shaped his heart, teaching him that even rough people deserve compassion. He grew up seeing his parents juggle authority and kindness, justice and mercy, firmness and love. That mix later defined his real-life attitude and the characters he brought to the screen. Life in Lamar during the Great Depression was rough, money was thin, and entertainment was a luxury almost nobody could buy. But even in all that struggle, young Ken found his spark in music. He sang at school, in church choirs, and at local meetups, and his warm, deep voice turned heads everywhere he went. Still, dreams of fame felt out of reach in the tough 1930s, and his parents, practical and protective, urged him to choose something steady instead of chasing the impossible. Following their advice, he enrolled at Colorado College and tried to talk himself into becoming a doctor, but every day felt like he was wearing someone else's life. Ken kept telling himself this was the right path, but inside he felt boxed in. Not by steel bars this time, but by a future he didn't want. He would sneak out of his dorm to sing at small campus events, and every burst of applause lit a fire he couldn't ignore. Finally, he made the gutsy move to walk away from medical school and chase what he truly loved: music. By the early 1940s, that risky choice started paying off big time. He landed a spot with Tommy Dorsey's orchestra, one of the hottest swing bands in America, right after Frank Sinatra walked out. Filling Sinatra's spot was almost impossible, but Ken stepped in with cool confidence and didn't flinch. Under Dorsey's guidance, he sharpened his discipline, professionalism, and stage style. Dorsey even suggested he drop the name Curtis Wayne Gates for something cleaner and easier to remember. So Ken Curtis was born, bold and unforgettable. Soon his voice was echoing across America as he toured the country, cut records, and later joined the Sons of the Pioneers, a legendary Western group with classics like Room Full of Roses and Ghost Riders in the Sky. His voice became woven into everyday American life. But even with success stacking up, Ken never shook off his roots. He carried the lessons from that sheriff's apartment above the jail, the humility, the quiet fairness, the steady way of doing right even when it wasn't easy. That strange childhood, full of law, struggle, and small acts of kindness, shaped the man he became on and off the stage. It gave him empathy for people fighting uphill battles, toughness when life pushed back, and an authenticity you couldn't fake. From the cells of Bent County to Hollywood's brightest stages, Ken Curtis held on to that small-town code, and sometimes it lifted him, and sometimes it weighed heavy on him. By the mid-1940s, he had carved out his spot in American entertainment. After rising with Dorsey's orchestra, his rich baritone became familiar to radio listeners everywhere. But Ken wasn't satisfied with just singing. He wanted to mix music with stories that hit people deeper. That dream led him to host Chuck Wagon Jamboree, a 15-minute syndicated radio show in Los Angeles that ran for over 130 episodes. Each show blended cowboy tunes, light talk, and simple moral tales, a perfect preview of the grounded, folksy charm that later made him unforgettable on screen. While radio kept his voice floating into millions of homes, Ken started feeling Hollywood calling his name loud and clear. America was hooked on the silver screen, and westerns were becoming the country's favorite escape. With his smooth charm, western upbringing, and strong music skills, he fit the genre like he was built for it. By 1945, he was stepping into musical westerns, taking small roles that blended story, grit, and song in a way only he could pull off. It didn't take long before one of the biggest forces in Hollywood took notice: director John Ford. Ford was the kind of legend who shaped actors like John Wayne and Henry Fonda into icons, and when he met Ken, he saw something rare. A man with real cowboy bones and a voice that could crack even the toughest audience open. Ford liked authenticity, and Ken had it without even trying. Ken soon slipped into Ford's tight circle of trusted actors and landed roles in classics like Rio Grande, The Quiet Man, and later The Searchers. Working under Ford was a huge honor, but it came with a sting. Ford was a genius, but he was rough, demanding, and ran his sets like a battlefield. He pushed actors hard, sometimes too hard, and he wasn't shy about embarrassing people if it got him the performance he wanted. Ken learned quick: stay calm, stay sharp, and never talk back if you want to survive the storm. Those lessons stuck with him and later paid off big during his long run on Gunsmoke. But while his career was growing, his personal life was getting pulled into the powerful Ford family web. In 1952, he married Barbara Ford, John Ford's daughter, a match that looked perfect on the outside, a rising star marrying into a Hollywood dynasty. But behind the glamour, things weren't smooth. Barbara grew up under her father's huge shadow, and Ken often felt like he didn't belong when the room filled with Hollywood insiders and high-profile names. Their marriage lasted more than a decade, but peace was always out of reach. The pressure of being tied to such a powerful figure, mixed with Ken's demanding career, slowly cracked their bond until it finally wore them down. They divorced quietly in 1964. No scandal, no fireworks. Just two tired people ready to step away from something that stopped working. But long before Barbara, Ken had already felt heartbreak hit him hard. His first marriage to actress Lorraine Page back in 1943 happened when they were both young, ambitious, and chasing success like it was running from them. The relationship burned fast and bright, but it couldn't hold together. Wartime tours, long travel schedules, and non-stop show business chaos kept them apart until even love couldn't glue it together anymore. They split on good terms, with no kids and no bad blood, each choosing their own path. Those early personal losses toughened Ken up, teaching him to keep calm and stay measured. People in Hollywood saw him as polite, steady, and reliable, the kind of man who never caused trouble but refused to let anyone push him around unfairly. But underneath that cool exterior, real wounds were taking shape. He watched how fame tore relationships apart, how loyalty felt like a rare treasure, and how success often stole your privacy without asking. By the late 1950s, Ken had fully stepped away from music and into acting, becoming a familiar face in Western films. He often played sidekicks, ranch workers, or honest men stuck in tough moral choices, roles that suited him but didn't fully satisfy him. Hollywood kept trying to box him in as the friendly cowboy, but inside he was hungry for richer roles. something deeper that meant more than a quick smile or a simple line. Western movies were changing fast, and television was about to flip the entire genre on its head. Ken had no clue yet, but the next chapter waiting for him would stamp his name into entertainment history and push his patience harder than anything he'd faced before. The birth of Festus Hagen changed everything for Ken Curtis in 1964. He was offered the role of a lifetime, Festus, the scruffy, sharp-tongued deputy on CBS's Gunsmoke. The show was already 9 seasons deep, and after Dennis Weaver left the role of Chester, producers needed someone new who could shake things up fast. Ken was only supposed to appear in 1 episode, but the audience locked onto Festus instantly. That gravelly voice, that crooked grin, that simple but deep wisdom, people couldn't get enough of him. Within months, he became a full-time member of the cast, appearing in more than 300 episodes over 11 long years. But rising success didn't guarantee smooth sailing behind the scenes. Tension came right along with it. Gunsmoke's leading man, James Arness, ruled the screen as Marshal Matt Dillon, tall, commanding, and laser-focused on protecting his character's authority. Behind the curtain, Ken often felt overshadowed, stuck in the role of the loyal deputy standing forever in the lawman's shadow. They stayed professional, but insiders admitted their relationship never warmed up. Ken admired Arness's talent, but quietly resented how much control Arness held over story decisions. Then there was Milburn Stone, the actor behind Doc Adams, strong-willed, experienced, and stubborn as a brick wall. He and Ken butted heads at times over dialogue, character moments, and screen presence. Their clashes never became public drama, but everyone on set could feel the tension when the two disagreed. Ken was a perfectionist and believed every character deserved real weight in the story, but Gunsmoke revolved around Dillon, always Dillon. Even with the rivalries simmering beneath the surface, Ken gave Festus everything he had. His musical rhythm, sharp comedic instincts, and strong moral edge shaped a character fans saw as the heart of the show, the scruffy, loyal voice of reason in Dodge City. But inside, Ken was fighting feelings Festus knew all too well, feeling underestimated, overlooked, and stuck playing second fiddle when he deserved more shine. And as conflicts stacked up, he began carrying real grudges, the 5 people who lingered in his mind long after the cameras stopped rolling. By the time Gunsmoke became one of TV's longest-running dramas, the pressure behind the scenes was boiling over, and Ken later hinted that 5 specific names had left the biggest scars on his life. 5 names carried more pain than respect for Ken, and James Arness sat right at the top of that list. Their relationship stayed complicated. Professional respect mixed with a wall of personal distance. Ken admired Arness's discipline, but he never felt the star saw him as an equal, and that quiet imbalance ate at him. Milburn Stone, the tough-as-nails Doc, was another name that stayed sharp in Ken's memory. They clashed over creative choices, sometimes pushing for the same lines or moments in group scenes. But when Stone became seriously ill in 1971, Ken was one of the few who visited him in private, a reminder that resentment and compassion can live side by side. The third name was producer John Mantley, a strict, budget-focused, no-nonsense force behind the show. Ken battled him constantly for fair pay and meaningful storylines for Festus, but Mantley refused to see him as anything more than a sidekick. Their feud turned so tense that by the end of Gunsmoke, the two barely spoke at all. Then there was Amanda Blake, Miss Kitty herself. Early on, they were friendly, but things shifted as Festus's popularity climbed. Rumors floated around that Blake felt uneasy about how much love fans were giving Ken's character. Both denied the talk in public, but during breaks on set, you could feel the strain hanging in the air. The fifth name was Dennis Weaver, the original deputy of Dodge City. Ken never even worked with him. Weaver left before Festus arrived, but the comparisons never stopped. Fans argued nonstop about who played the better deputy, and Ken quietly hated being judged against a man he'd never shared a scene with. Even after Festus became one of the show's most beloved characters, Ken felt that comparison shadow creeping behind him everywhere he went. These 5 names defined his Hollywood battles. Not loud blow-ups, but quiet rivalries that dug deep into his pride. And when Gunsmoke wrapped in 1975, Ken Curtis was 59, worn down but standing tall while others faded. After losing a long-running role, Ken handled the change with real dignity. He picked up smaller parts in TV shows, films, Western events, and stage appearances, choosing a slower, calmer life instead of chasing the spotlight. But his principles stayed sharp as ever, and they guided his next big choice. In 1987, CBS announced Gunsmoke, Return to Dodge, a reunion movie that brought back James Arness as Marshall Dillon and Amanda Blake as Miss Kitty. Fans were sure Festus would ride back into Dodge too, but Ken turned down the offer, not out of anger, but out of pure principle. The network offered him a paycheck he felt was disrespectful, way below what his years of work deserved. He refused to let himself be treated like a background note in a story he helped build. His decision shocked fans who didn't know the truth, but people close to him said Ken felt calm afterward. He'd stood his ground one last time off camera. In his personal life, things finally settled into something steady and peaceful after 2 marriages that didn't last. He met Tori Connolly in 1966, a warm-hearted woman far removed from Hollywood chaos, and the two married quietly, staying together for the rest of his life. Tori grounded him completely, helping him rediscover the simple joys of family, faith, and wide-open nature. Ken became a devoted stepfather to her 2 kids, filling his days with fishing trips, travel, and Western gatherings across the country. As he grew older, he also became more vocal about his political beliefs, backing Barry Goldwater in 1964 and Ronald Reagan in 1976. His conservative stance brought supporters and critics, but Ken didn't flinch. He always said a man has to stand for something. By 1991, his health began slipping quietly, and on April 28th of that year, Ken Curtis passed away in his sleep at his home in Clovis, California, after a heart attack. He was 74, leaving behind a legacy carved out of grit and heart. His ashes were scattered across the plains of Colorado, the same land where a sheriff's son once grew up above a jail, listening to the world through steel bars. In the end, the grudges that once weighed him down faded like old dust on a trail, and what stood strong was his legacy. A man who stayed real in a business built on pretending. Ken Curtis never chased the bright lights or big paydays. He just wanted respect, plain and simple. And even though Hollywood could be rough, his name still stands as one of TV's most treasured Western legends. Do you think Gunsmoke would have hit the same without Festus Hagen bringing that raw charm and grit? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about Hollywood's hidden legends. See you on the next one.